There were many renditions to my landscape design, finally ending with one that looked kind of like this, as far as layout goes, with a final phase including an in-ground pool. The first thing that I did back in 2017 was install a brick paver driveway. Some people are afraid of brick paver driveways, but as you can see, I park a 37,000 pound truck on it on a regular basis, with no problems. The very next thing we did before we even had a lawn was plant our privacy trees in the back. The goal of a good phasing plan is to put in all of your trees first so that they can start to fill in and create your canopy and your privacy screening. As you can see, in 2018, we continued from the driveway down the side of the house into the backyard, eventually building a fireplace and then a full outdoor living area with a patio and a kitchen. Something to note in any good phasing plan is it doesn't just stop with the hardscape. It may be a step you want to get to right away, as we did, so we did it in year 2. But it needs to continue with the plant, and those plants need to progress through the season because that's going to enhance your overall experience in the yard. Why don't we take a tour through time and see how my yard progresses with the season.
It's pretty cold outside today, and well, we can't really see any seasonal interest because we've got 3 feet of snow on the ground.
But once that snow melts, if you have some bulbs in place, your yard erupts with life early into the season, starting out with daffodils. As the daffodils start to die back, my periwinkle starts to bloom. And you make a quick 360, and you can see the spirea starting to emerge up. We treat this spirea like a perennial and cut it down every year, but it is a woody and you can leave it up through the winter. Lamb's ear is a great plant, and its fuzzy foliage provides interest all 8 months of the year. One of our early flowers may not be a super interesting one, but it provides a good ground cover, and it's the daylily. As you progress down the side of my house, you can see that I've chosen to add interest with foliage. So again, not necessarily a perennial flower, but the waxy blue foliage of the Hosta, contrasting against the cut leaf chartreuse foliage of the sumac, adds a lot of interest. The next flower at my property to bloom is Dianthus Firewich. It has these beautiful pink flowers, really pretty blue grass-like foliage, and it adds a lot of interest even when it's not blooming. A little care tip with all your plants: if you cut back on the dead flowers before they create seeds, they're going to make new flowers to be pollinated because the plant wants to reproduce. Dianthus is a fantastic rebloomer, even if you don't cut back. But if you do cut back, you will enjoy pink flowers on this one all 8 months of the year. You'll notice that where my allium are planted, I've mixed 3 types of allium. An allium bulb that blooms in the early spring right after the daffodils, an allium that blooms midsummer, and an allium that blooms towards the end of the year. They all have similar foliage, they all have similar flowers, they all have similar habits, but these 3 different plants give me 3 different periods of the year where I have that same purple interest in my front yard. This planting area is one of my favorite planting areas on my full property. I just love the chartreuse foliage of the spirea, contrasting off of the dark purple foliage of the Diablo 9-bark, and in front, the caramel heuchera. Caramel heucheras don't always come in well for me, but I continue to replant, and eventually over time, this space will really fill in nicely. In the early spring, the spirea and the 9-bark bloom at the same time, but I didn't necessarily plant this bed for its flowers. I planted it for 8 months of cool foliage. One of the next things to bloom is the lamb's ear. Again, I planted this one for the foliage, not necessarily the flower. I enjoy the flower because of its uniqueness, but my wife does not like the look of the flower. She thinks it's kind of sloppy looking. Lucky for her, it's not a very good rebloomer. You can see that all the flowers are gone on my favorite planting, but I still enjoy this area. And when you look to the left, you can see that some of the hydrangeas are starting to bloom. The allium is coming through for its second round. The daylilies are just finishing up. So a lot of things are starting while other things are stopping, and the yard continues to be interesting. Now as we walk down the side of the yard, let's fast forward into the middle of the summer. And here you can see a perennial that we try to add to every single one of our plantings. It's a very important Illinois native called Asclepias tuberosa, the butterfly milkweed. This plant is essential to the mating and reproduction of the monarch butterfly. That's why we try to incorporate it in every site. It doesn't hurt that it's also beautiful. You can see a couple of annuals that we mixed in for elongated color right underneath a rose that's a full season performer. This particular knockout rose starts blooming in July, and it continues to bloom all the way through October. Next to that is a catmint that's nuzzled right up against our water feature that adds a whole nother layer of interest to the yard. Speaking of butterflies, why not check out a flower that double dips and attracts not only butterflies to your yard, but hummingbirds as well. This one is called Monardia bee balm. This particular one is goblin. You get about a month's worth of blooms out of this guy, from the end of June all the way into the beginning of August. Back here are some more daylilies. This is Happy Returns, which is a much lighter yellow and a little bit larger plant. Next to that are some late summer blooming alliums. And next to that is Mary Todd, a third type of daylily. This one is significantly larger, as you can see in contrast by my hand next to it. And as we reach the end of July, the flower heads on Liatris start to extend. This is another very important Illinois native. And you'll see it blooming as the season progresses. And why don't we take a quick peek at another one of my favorites, which is Sedum Autumn Joy. It has a beautiful pink flower in October when nothing else is blooming, but it has these thick succulent leaves that are really cool to look at all summer. I have it next to my evergreens for a significant contrast in foliage. As we come to the end of the summer, you can see the black-eyed Susans blooming, giving us nice yellow. The hydrangeas are blooming. The third round of allium is going off. Our milkweed is still blooming. And here they are, the Liatris, in full bloom. Such an important plant for one of our favorite pollinators, the bee. Without them, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't even be alive. As we come down the side yard, this is more of a late summer garden. We have some Limelight Hydrangeas, more black-eyed Susans, coneflowers, grasses, evergreens. And as we progress into September, a lot of the things are starting to die back, but we've changed out our annuals to some fall annuals. Of course, my favorite bed is still giving me a fun foliage show. Catmint blooms for most of the year, so you can see that guy in effect. The hydrangeas are starting to die back. You can see some of my stress sumac are getting fall colors sooner than later. Notice it's the ones on the end. And another late season performer is the anemone. Of course, our roses are giving us continuous flowers throughout the summer and fall. The off-white flowers of the Limelight Hydrangea die back. They give you a nice pink fall color. I have this little Japanese maple survivor that I plugged in here for some random reason. And you can always enjoy the exfoliating bark of a river birch. And soon, they'll be giving us a beautiful yellow fall color. I've mentioned this little guy quite a few times, but here it's pink flowers. Coming up on Halloween, it's still fun to have some things blooming. As the season starts to end, the sumac gives you one last fall show, as well as the grow low sumac over here. Our anemone's still trying to cheer up the space. The fall color on the butterfly weed is beautiful, especially in contrast to the rose. And there's that beautiful yellow fall color. I got out here a little bit late, it had defoliated a bit, but it's nice to see it in contrast to my neighbor's autumn blaze maple. The red next to the yellow really gives that space some depth. At the very end of the year, my favorite planting, once again, takes your breath away by changing a little bit to give you some deep burgundies and some beautiful yellows. You can see the heuchera down low is kind of thin and sparse. And with perennials, it's kind of a trial and error experience. And then in your fall cleanup, you adjust. A backyard is a place to have activity and engage with friends and family. It's also a place to engage with nature. Watch it progress and take care of it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Stay with me on the journey. If you'd like to see some more pictures of this project and my space, there's a link right here. First are pictures of my current house, and after that, I drop some pictures of my old house, so that you can see this type of space that I enjoy through good landscape design and well thought out plantings.